This meeting is being recorded. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Property VA's Delegation Success Workshop. I shall be sharing my screen shortly and get on with today's presentation and workshop. So today we will be talking about best practices for hiring and working with Filipino VAs. I'll just start this presentation now. A lot of you will have had approached me with a very clear objective in mind. You need virtual assistants in your business. You have an idea that virtual assistants will help you do more and achieve more in property. And this is a good goal. This is a good objective to have. But we would like to match your objective with managed expectations as well as practical delegation tools to help you work with Filipino VAs. You might have heard success stories from other property investors who have worked very successfully with Filipino VAs, and that's great. That's what inspired you to reach out and do the same for your business. But you may have also heard other property investors and business owners who've had a different experience, a less than happy ending with their VAs. Maybe that's you as well. Hence, you've reached out to find out, how do I do this better next time? So Filipino VAs, they seem to have a reputation with property investors, either that's really good or something else, right? So the good stories that you've heard are that Filipino VAs are helpful, industrious, uncomplaining. You give them any tasks and they'll say yes to it, to a fault sometimes. They're very eager to carry out their tasks, to approach you and go, what tasks do I need to do today? They're also highly skilled in a lot of IT programs and platforms out there. Not just that they're skilled in IT, but they can teach themselves very quickly with whatever platform you'd like them to get on with for your business. Filipinos generally have English as their second language. Sometimes it's a side by side with their local Filipino language. But yes, you can definitely communicate with them and they can communicate back to you with ease. They're very competent, very easy to train. And for a lot of small business owners, one of the best reasons for hiring Filipino VAs would be that they're very easy on the business budget. Now let's get on with the flip side of hiring Filipino VAs. And this has a lot to do with the culture aspect and the work ethics of Filipinos, because you can tick all the boxes when it comes to carrying out the tasks and having IT skills. But that's not the only thing that you need to think about when you hire the right person to help you achieve your goals in business. So we've got Filipinos who come from a different culture. And with that culture comes a little bit of adjustment on the business owner side. And these things that business owners tend to find frustrating with Filipino VAs are that they have trouble asserting themselves, admitting that they're overworked. They definitely have a lot of trouble asking for help. They're terrified of making mistakes, so they will not let you know that they actually need some help carrying out the task, that they don't actually understand the instructions, or that they didn't even hear the instructions. So all of this, they're averse to displeasing you as their boss. And what can happen, and I'm going to say tend to happen, is instead of them approaching you, having an honest conversation with you about the support that they need, about the challenges that they have, they will simply disappear, okay? Which is not good for reputations of Filipino VAs in general. I'm a Filipina, so I understand their culture, and I take it personally when we have a reputation like this. And I do want to fix it. But it's not enough for me to fix Filipinos' attitudes. I so strongly would like to help UK business owners, property investors who can see the benefits of working with Filipino VAs, but want to mitigate these risks that you see here on your screen. So, yes, we've heard stories of Filipinos being a headache to business owners. Um, but ultimately, what I'd like business owners to come to realize is that they have the power in them to learn how to work with Filipino VAs. So here are a few things that we can take into consideration to manage and mitigate these negative things that come with hiring and working with Filipino VAs. Number one would be regular communication. Have weekly short team huddles with your VAs. Discuss with them not just the work, but what comes with them personally, what they bring to the table, working for you in your business. One of the best tools that I highly recommend is what I call the LBs and NTs. So LB stands for like best, and NT stands for next time. That is to say, and can I just point you to this little post-it notes over here at the corner? Turn communication into an SOP. So an SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure. That is to say, it is a standard procedure that when you sit down for a team huddle, you can cover something like an LB and NT. So you can ask the VA in formatted conversations, what do you like best about so and so? Whether that's a task, that's a goal, that's a criticism, or something that you want to hear the VA's opinion on. What do you like best about this thing in front of you? And get the VA to answer that question. And then proceed to asking what can um, what can happen next time to change the situation or to improve in the situation. Now, you can formulate this question as or by asking, what can I do as your boss? What can I do as your client do next time? What can you do as yourself, the VA, next time to improve in this situation? Whether you're talking about a mistake or something that happened adversely, or you're simply doing a review, a general review of practices or work within your office or your business. But having this kind of structured communication turned into an SOP helps you and the VA work together um, more efficiently, and you mitigate things like the VA not approaching you, the VA not being open and communicating about the challenges that he or she is facing or help that he or she needs. Okay. The fourth tip that I would recommend is that you create flowcharts so you understand the workload that your VA is handling, and also that you understand exactly the work processes that are happening in your business, and understand which roles are you can actually point to your VA as being responsible for those tasks, and which ones should be looked after by yourself as the business owner. Although we're not going to cover this today because we really just want to talk about SOPs and flowcharts and things like that. The other thing that you can also do as a business owner when it comes to recruitment is to ask the VA during the interview the VA's attitudes towards perfection and mistakes, asking for help, and stress management. Now, pinch of salt here, of course, that the VA will likely respond to these questions um, with answers that you would like to hear, but use it as an opportunity to then talk about what you would like to happen in when working with a VA. So this isn't just about you asking a question and then based on the VA's response is how you grade the the candidate. This is about you as the business owner about to hire the VA that you want to work with, to also communicate to the candidate what your ideal situation would be like working with a VA. So, just in terms of managing expectations when working with Filipino virtual assistants, it is always good to know that the VA cannot replace you. You are the business owner, so you still have to be the business owner. It is a common misconception that you can delegate everything to your VA, that you will essentially multiply yourself. I think this might be like an early 2000 concept about you hire VA so that you can duplicate yourself, you can replicate yourself. Um, I am here to disrupt and change that concept. The VA will definitely not be able to replace you. Okay. Just think of how many thousands of pounds you've invested in yourself to be educated in property. Your VA does not have that education. Okay. I think I'm preempting some of these points now. Great. So the VA cannot do everything. The VA cannot make decisions for you. The VA has no property education. We touched on that very briefly, which means that the VA is not an investor. So I always get highly surprised that there are still a lot of property investors out there that think that when they hire a VA, the VA can then find them property deals. I'm not so sure how they can have that thinking, understanding and being trained as property investors themselves. Um, but so us here at the Property VA, we're here to help you work in kind of the smart way when it comes to bringing in a VA to your team. And being smart would include knowing what it is that you can delegate to a VA. And finally, the VA will still need your time and supervision. This isn't a leave everything with your VA kind of situation. Um, you know, your VA is indeed someone you can delegate tasks to, but it doesn't mean that you abdicate those tasks over to the VA. So we have a few philosophies that we take on board here at the Property VA when it comes to working best and working smartly with a Filipino VA. The first philosophy is systemization. Now, the core of this philosophy is that it's not the VAs that are doing the work. They are carrying out the tasks, but they're not the one doing the work. The ones that are doing the work should be your systems, which means that it's on you as a business owner to have systems in place so that when you bring a VA on board, you've got the VA ready to carry out and operate the system for you. Okay. I really like this quote when it says here, the business should be systems dependent, not employee dependent. So if you remember some of the um, negatives about working with Filipino VAs is that because they don't complain about work, the business owner tends to then hand over more work than the VA can carry, and they won't complain, but they do get overwhelmed and then they disappear. So this is one of our core philosophies, because if you want to mitigate that situation, if you want to prevent the situation wherein you've relied so much on your VA and they don't, and in this particular situation, when you're working with a culture specific Filipino VA who will not communicate back to you that they are overwhelmed, that they are overworked, that they are overstressed. So I don't know if that's a word. They are stressed. Then you'll just have a situation wherein you become so VA dependent on a VA who will not communicate back to you, and then they disappear, right? So that is not a very nice situation to find yourself in. This slide is just repeating what we covered. VAs don't work. VAs are the operators of your solutions. Okay. Philosophy number 2 is scalability. As a business owner, you must not make your VA indispensable. We just talked about VAs disappearing, VAs doing all sorts of whatever VAs do. They are human after all. So it's good to have this philosophy always in mind when it comes to hiring and working with VAs, is that we must not think that our VAs will permanently be there. We must always understand that VAs can leave, whether that's a malicious reason or an honest reason for them to have to stop working for you. If we understand that VAs are replaceable from the start, that means that we are not dependent on whatever situation the VA goes through. Okay. Now, this is not to say that, that we want a situation or a system in place where we can just get rid of the VA. That's not the point of scalability. Scalability is growth. So when we say we'd like our VA to be replaceable, it's because we'd like to give room for the VA for growth and promotion. So it works both ways. Now, third, we've got the philosophy of understanding that we will only delegate VA-able tasks to the VA and work on the tasks that we as business owners, us as property investors, can then look after the other tasks. So how do we know that they are VA-able tasks? We can go through a few diagnosis, you could say. Number 1 is it checklist based. Now, the opposite of checklist based is a judgment based task. That is to say, a VA will be required to make judgment calls, analysis that would be, well, shall we just say, open to a lot of mistakes. So if it is checklist based, then it's a simple case of, is this a yes or a no? Is this pass or fail? Is this pass or reject? That's what checklist based means. Second criteria would be, can you explain the tasks with a step-by-step instruction? Third, can you generate templates with the tasks that you've handed over to your VA? Whether these are FAQ, email response templates, whether these are data scraping tasks and other sorts of tasks where you can essentially create a library of templates that the VA can repeatedly go back to repeat the task. The fourth criteria is it low value, repetitive, and time consuming? I have lumped 3 of these descriptions in one criteria, but it tells you very quickly what would be a good task to delegate to a VA. So for example, you should stop doing some of the repetitive tasks that you can simply hand over to a VA to look after. This might be data entry, data scraping, responding to FAQs. So these are good tasks to hand over to the VA. Fourth and final philosophy is don't go crazy. VAs cannot do everything. You don't have to outsource and delegate. All the tasks that are on your wish list to hand over to the VA, even if all of them are VA-able tasks, that's a really good point here. Even if all of them are VA-able tasks, it doesn't mean that you need to hand over all of them to the VA right now, all at once. Focus on a maximum of 3 to 4 task groups. I recommend, in fact, if you're just starting out, 1 to 2 task groups. Okay, just enough to free up some of your time to do some tasks yourself. Now, this is good to do when you can still get some of the even the VA-able tasks yourself, because then what by doing these tasks yourself, you can see how best to do it and not let the VA do the learning for you. Remember, as business owners, we create the systems for our VA, not the other way around. So the VAs are there to operate on the solutions. When you come in as a business owner trying to do the tasks that later on you will hand over to the VA, that gives you tangible and first-hand experience as to how to carry it out best and create the SOP, the standard operating procedure for carrying out the tasks. And you can translate that into an SOP manual for the VA to then operate. So here's a concrete example of how you can utilize a VA to look after some of the tasks that you're wanting to carry out in your business. In this instance, the example is utilizing your VA to find property deals. So we've got here a flow chart that describes what actually happens in the task of finding property deals. Okay, a good question to ask is, where does your VA for this role, in this instance a lead gen VA, fit in the property acquisitions process? I do have a lot of inquiring property investors come to me to ask about VAs who are what are the words that they use sometimes? Oh, I need a VA who understands rent to rent because I want to find rent to rent deals. What they're really telling me with that question is, I want to stop finding rent to rent deals myself, and I just want to get the VA to find the rent to rent deals for me. So this VA has to be very good at rent to rent. Now, I just want to go back to manage expectations. In this instance, this question tells me that this property investor does not have the right expectations of what VAs can do. VAs can parrot back to you what a rent to rent investment strategy is, but that doesn't mean that they can actually take over the entire process of finding rent to rent deals for you. If that property investor just sat down and actually break down what is involved in finding rent to rent deals, then that property investor can fully understand how best to leverage the VA as part of his team. Okay, so creating a workflow like this will help you in your own business as well. So what we've got here with the question of where does your lead gen VA fit in your property acquisitions process, now we can understand that property acquisitions actually involves two processes or two workflows. One is marketing and the other is sales. And this workflow I created is also color coordinated so that you can clearly see who's doing which stage in the workflow in the process. So visually, you can see who does what. In this chart, we've got blue as the investor and red for the VA. Wait, what happened? Okay, sorry about that. So what we've got here is we can clearly see that the VA's role is predominantly, if not exclusively, within the marketing workflow, okay? And that the sales workflow is then predominantly looked after by the investor. Now I say predominantly because actually you can still break down each of these stages in the workflow into subtasks, and then you'll see that within the subtasks, VAs look after some and the investor looks after other tasks. So first of all, we've got here the identification and clarification of the investment strategy. This is obviously the role of the investor. The VA cannot help you with this, although I've had some clients who mistakenly ask their VAs on what the best approach is to investment, and I'm not so sure how they do well in property, to be honest, if they think they can delegate that question to a VA. But here we are. Let's say for this example, we've got an investor who's identified C2R as their investment strategy. So it is up to the investor to then clarify what the marketing strategy is going to be to find C2R property deals. Now, this might be that the investor wants to use Nimbus, for example, or the investor wants to data scrape listings online that deal primarily with commercial properties for sale. Whatever that strategy is, the investor then communicates to the VA, this is my strategy, and this is my investment strategy, and this is the marketing strategy to carry out that investment strategy. Guess what? The VA will still not do the work here for you. The VA will wait for your next instructions, which will then be how does the VA carry out your marketing strategy that you've pointed out here. Okay, so this is when you clarify what the instruction will be for the VA. Will the VA send direct to vendor letters? Will the VA be ringing estate agents and do some lead qualifying? Will the VA put out Facebook ads? Will the VA book print ads for you? Whatever that task is, that is what the VA will carry out. Now, it makes sense that the VA looks after a lot of the marketing tasks because marketing is a numbers game. You've heard it very often and very frequently in property mentoring sessions. Property investment is a numbers game, but what they're not clarifying there is that the numbers game happens in the marketing processes. So how many letters have you sent out? How many offers have you made? Etc. etc. That's where really the numbers happen. It's in the marketing workflow. We also earlier we talked about, well, what is a VA-able task? A VA-able task, one of the criteria is that it's low value but then repetitive. So hence why if you're after numbers, then it's got to be a task that can be repeated. So it's a repetitive task. Repetitive tasks are generally also low value. They are checklist based. There's no kind of judgment calls and analysis going on here. It's a task that goes over that gets repeated over and over again. Perfect for a VA to do. Now, by using a workflow such as this one, we can also then clearly see when the VA's role stops and your role as the business owner comes into play. Visually, we can see that the VA's role stops when there's an interest. So when someone responds to your marketing campaign, whether that's through letters that you've sent out in the post, or leafletting or whatever it is. So an interest comes in, the VA then hands it over to you, notifies you, hey, we've got someone who's interested to talk to you about buying their property. This is when you come in as the business owner. As you can see here, it's predominantly blue. That's you as the investor. It doesn't mean to say that the VA stops working for these tasks. It just means that the main role is now you. Some of the tasks that the VA can still help you with on here might be admin work, such as maybe doing some online research, maybe sending out a brochure, or let's say when it comes to let's say the contract signing, there's documents that you need to send to solicitors and all sorts. The VA can still be your assistant for these tasks, but they are not the main operator of these stages anymore. It's going to have to be you as the investor. Okay. We talked about, you as the property investor, you've got the property education to solve vendors' problems, which is, it's not a VA-able task at this point, because it requires you to look at the toolkit that you have from your experience, the toolkits that you have from your education and property, from your mentorship, whatever it is that you have, in order to provide a win-win solution, a solution that works for you as a business and a solution that works for the vendor. Right. So, this is what we're trying to help other property investors and business owners when it comes to working with VAs, so that they can really not just maximize what a VA can do and leverage the right tasks with the VAs, but also help with things like retention, VA satisfaction with working for you in your business, and helping you grow your business. Okay. In conclusion, working with a Filipino can be very rewarding. Filipino VA rates are very cost effective. They can speak English, and they're highly IT competent. And then the Filipino culture encourages helpfulness and friendliness as a typical trait. These are qualities that business owners appreciate in Filipino VAs. But also, it's good to bear in mind what the challenges are for the business owner when it comes to working with Filipino VAs. So VAs are operators of your solutions, which means do not expect solutions from your VA. And I don't mean that you cannot get into conversations with your VA, asking them for suggestions or involving them in brainstorming sessions. That's not the point of this statement. It means that you, as a business owner, give the direction in terms of what your VA's role is in your business. Okay. It's also good to understand and distinguish what tasks you can delegate to your VA and what tasks should solely be your domain as the business owner. It's also good to know of cultural nuances. I've described how Filipinas are. They are helpful to a fault. And when I say fault, I do mean a fault, because then them being very helpful would mean that they will say yes to tasks even when they really shouldn't be doing it or cannot do it for you. You also need more than just IT skills and experience in a VA. You actually need not just the understanding of the VA's culture, but you need, as the business owner, you need to have your solutions and systems in place in which you can bring in the VA. And finally, if not done properly, working with VAs could just be another job on top of your to-do list, which is the last thing that you had in mind when you wanted to reach out to look for a VA for your company. So who are we at the Property VA? We work with property investors like yourselves, landlords, sourcers, developers. Our main goal is to help property investors and business owners scale their business efficiently by expertly working with Filipino virtual assistants. The two most common reasons for VA delegation failure that we've identified would be one of two things. One is lack of clarity, and the other is lack of systems.
This meeting is being recorded.
So I'll just be sharing my screen.
Miss Christina, I think you're on mute.
Am I still on mute? I think we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you. Sorry for a few of these technical difficulties. We'll get them all sorted out soon enough. I will be sharing my screen once more. Thank you. Great. So today is the Delegation Success Workshop, and a lot of you have approached me asking, Christina, where do I start with hiring a VA? You are all drowning in admin tasks and other time-consuming tasks in your business. And I just want to take a moment for me to congratulate all of you that you are in fact in this position, that you are thinking of hiring a VA. It means you're doing two things right. One is that your business is growing, and now you're thinking of hiring VAs. So really well done to you. And then secondly, you are in the right mindset of thinking about growing and scaling your business even more and removing yourself from tasks that you shouldn't be doing and maximizing and leveraging your time to do more high value tasks that will help your business grow even more. However, hiring VAs are actually quite challenging as much as they are exciting for a lot of business owners. And here at the Property VA, our experience has helped us help other property investors and business owners really leverage what they can do with virtual assistants as efficiently as possible. And we have heard lots of stories. Some are just plain frustration, and others are downright horror stories about working with VAs. And for us, what we're trying to do here is to help property investors and business owners avoid those frustrating stories, expensive mistakes when it comes to working with VAs. So for today's workshop, our main goal is to get you and other property investors VA ready, to get your business VA ready. For today as well, we'll teach you some easy VA systemizing tools. All of this is to help you with VA retention as well as being very efficient with working with VAs. So our agenda for today is to cover the two most common reasons for VA delegation failure. And afterwards, we'll look at the 5 steps. We'll look at the 5 steps to help you become delegation experts. And then hopefully we'll also give you some free takeaway tools that you can implement. These tools are practical. These tools do not require expensive software subscriptions. Simple pen and paper will do, and it will make a massive difference to how you will later on, once you're ready, work with virtual assistants. There will be a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to ask me other questions that I will not have covered necessarily during the workshop segment. So we are the Property VA. My name is Christina Osborne. I'm a property investor, but I'm also from the Philippines. At the start of my journey in property, I get approached a lot asking where I'm from because I look different. And whenever I mention that I'm from the Philippines, the conversation inevitably moves towards them asking me, oh, I've heard someone working with VAs from the Philippines. I heard it's great, or that they're looking for Filipino VAs. And my first foray into the VA business is simply to act as an agent, to find a recruitment agent, to find VAs from the Philippines. And then I would leave the property investor to work with their VAs. Unfortunately, that wasn't the best way for me to help property investors. It would usually then turn to them not having a good experience working with VAs. And I didn't know how to help them. So thankfully, sharing their experience with me, learning more into how it is that I can help property investors and business owners work with VAs more effectively has helped me create the property VA into the business that it's at right now, which is we're not just recruitment agents, we're actually a business that helps property investors delegate and work more effectively with virtual assistants. And how we do this is we first of all identify what is it exactly that creates the failure, the frustrating experience that business owners have when it comes to working with virtual assistants. And it all comes down to two things: lack of clarity and lack of systems. If you hear a business owner who's got a VA that just disappeared on them, you've heard of business owners who find it difficult to get their VAs to learn something which they consider to be a very simple task, is one or the other. It's lack of clarity or lack of systems. And today we're going to address these two most common reasons for VA delegation failure with our roadmap. So at the Property VA, we have a roadmap.
Lack of clarity arises when there's no goal for a VA to work towards. Typically, this would be when the property investor would simply give um, too much ad hoc tasks for the VA to work on. The property investor spends quite an amount of time on a daily basis just coming up with instructions, coming up with maybe additional training, which eats up a lot of the investor's time in order to utilize the hours that he or she is paying for the VA. With this, the VA also typically gets overwhelmed and overworked. And because there's a lack of direction and consistency, you've got VAs who are generally unhappy with their working situation. Although you won't really find them complaining too much to you, you might find that eventually down the line, they'll simply just hand in their notice as they no longer want to work for you. The second reason for VA delegation failure would be lack of systems. Now, I mentioned ad hoc instructions earlier. It's not an issue to have occasional ad hoc tasks to give to a VA. It's when on a daily basis, everything is changing all the time. Or maybe not daily basis, but certainly that there isn't one direction that you have planned for the VA. This would, the lack of systems would tie in very closely with the issue of lack of clarity. You can't have systems in place when you don't have clarity in which you can design systems for. The lack of systems would also indicate that there's no way of monitoring a VA's performance. The VA does not have a routine. The VA is constantly waiting for you to provide instructions. And in the meantime, you are really paying for the VA to be twiddling his or her thumbs. And then as well, this would mean an extra job for you as the property investor and business owner, because without systems, you constantly will have to keep coming up with instructions, training manuals, and all sorts to communicate to the VA every single time you've got a task to delegate. So for today's workshop, what we've designed is a roadmap in which we can help property investors and business owners like yourselves come up with a delegating system to avoid lack of clarity and lack of systems. With a roadmap, we can show you straightforward instructions. We've mapped out the steps for you, and you'll simply have to follow the steps. We'll minimize the gaps in knowledge, and in for your experience, what you get would be a guided journey for hiring and working with Filipino VAs. So the roadmap includes 5 steps, and each of these steps would identify one specific goal to help you towards a successful working relationship with your virtual assistant. So, step one would be business clarity. For today's workshop, this is the step that we will mostly go dive into. The other steps I'll show you on the platform exactly what they will involve, but we'll just gloss over it. So the other steps would require a smooth onboarding, efficient recruitment, and step 4 would be building a template library. Step 5 would be regular reviews with your virtual assistants. I think we talked earlier about a few examples on how to do regular reviews with your VAs. That's one way that you can actually implement that. So for business clarity, which is step 1 of the 5-step roadmap, it will involve the 6 P's to create a delegation system. So this would involve naming your project. That's a first P. Sometimes it's called prerequisite. Sometimes it's just project. We've got purpose, which is where you as a business owner will have clarity and be very specific about what you're wanting to achieve. Then we move on to the process, which is the P for creating and naming a process map. Earlier, I showed you a process map of the property acquisitions process. Now, the idea is to simply create individual stages that will lead you towards your goal. At that point, we're not really saying who's doing what. We're just creating the workflow. We're just creating the process. Then the step after creating a process map is then for you to identify which of those stages should be carried out by your virtual assistant and which should be carried out by you as the business owner. Finally, once we've got a process map and have identified the person looking after that task, then we can specify the steps to carry out the process. Now, there's I hear a lot of property investors who record long video recordings of how to carry out certain tasks. I would recommend that you break down the videos into smaller clips in which the VA can then look at each step with a much shorter video and can copy the steps straight away rather than watch an entire video, and after which, after sitting in front of the laptop for an hour and a half, the VA would have forgotten what it was and how it was to carry out the individual steps. And finally, and we'll work on this today as well, is to create a program. Now, when we say program, what we're actually doing is we're programming the VA's weekly routine and daily routine, and we can do this when we create a default diary. So we'll head over to the practical applications and implementations of the 6P delegation system. So what we've got here is a printable fill in the blanks VA SOP template kit. SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure. This is how we can utilize and implement the 6Ps of systems and SOP creation: the project, the purpose, the process, the person, procedure, and then program. Um, Above here, so this is a printable. You can print this at home. If you haven't got a copy after watching this recording, please email me at info@thepropertyva.co.uk. That's info@thepropertyva.co.uk to ask for your copy. We've got a space here to write in your project, details. Now, let's go back to the philosophy of having very clear and specific small groups of tasks. And we what we're trying to help you with here is to make sure that what we're not trying to do is delegate to the VA 100 tasks or 10 tasks even. We're just doing it one at a time. So let's say this project would be um, creating an email FAQ template library. Okay, so that is the task that you want the VA to do in the next couple of weeks, maybe. Okay. What is the purpose of that? You can simply write it down. Now, you don't actually have to print this off at home. You can simply use this template as a guide for you to write down in your own physical notebook at home. So after we've written down what the purpose is, now we can get into creating our process maps. Now, in this instance, just for it to be economical on an A4 sheet, we've created the process map as a vertical journey from stage 1 over here to stage 8. You may need fewer stages than 8 stages, you may need more. That's entirely up to you and the tasks that you have on hand. I've got notes here to help you with creating process maps. In the previous slides, you saw how I created a process map using a flow chart. You can also do the same. Other investors and business owners prefer to create process maps as a Kanban board, so this is arranged horizontally. So these are the three ways: either it's vertically, it's horizontally, or as a flow chart. Once you've identified what each stage is for that process, now you can say who's actually going to look after that stage. Is it yourself as the investor, or is it your virtual assistant? And it's always good to remember what are, how, or that is to say, how do you distinguish VA-able tasks and tasks that is not recommended that you delegate to a virtual assistant. Finally, we've got the procedure. Now, there's only space for one procedure here because each stage should actually have its own breakdown of individual steps that will comprise the procedure for that stage. So use this as a template rather than the actual space where you will write down the procedure. Finally, on creating a program, um, you can think about these 5 aspects. Consider the task at hand. Consider how frequently you'd like the VA to carry out the task. Consider which days of the week they're supposed to carry it out. This could be 1 or 2 days of the week or every day of the week. And then you have to start thinking about how long am I going to instruct the VA to work on this specific tasks. Now this is important because if without this instruction, if the task really is only meant to be attended to for 10 minutes or 15 minutes of the day, without these specific instructions, your VA will simply assume that you want her to carry on working on the same tasks for as long as you have her for that day. So if you have the VA for 2 hours that day, the VA will take 2 hours to work on a task that will only take 15 minutes. So this is very important to specify. And then finally, apart from just specifying the length of time, you can also specify whether there's a specific block of time you want the VA to carry out the tasks, or are you happy for the VA to be on a flexi schedule? Some tasks can be carried out on a flexi schedule, like data scraping, for example, whereas some tasks you might want it to be on a specific hour of the day. Let's say for this task, which is invoicing, you've got an accountant coming in every Tuesdays and Fridays at this time, so you'd like the VA to also be present online while you have the accountant logged in at the same time. So we've got this fill in the blanks printable as a guideline for you to create your own SOP for every task that you'd like the VA to look after.
Hi, Christine. I'll step in.
Hi, Adam.
Hi,
Thank
right.
you. What are you working on?
What I've got with one of my VAs is I'm asking her to do all my invoicing.
Invoicing, okay. Is it invoicing in general, or is there one particular
It's all
aspect of invoicing?
It's all invoicing and it's all bookkeeping work. But I've just kept it down to this point here. Invoicing.
My invoices. Your
Okay.
invoice.
Darren, have you got something to share, or did you mean to mute yourself? Oh, thank you, Darren. Adam, sorry, back over to you. With regards to invoicing, were you able to look at the task and break it down into smaller steps from beginning to end?
Yeah, I went. The way I put it was starting up requesting for the invoice information. So I asked the VA to basically give her a date and then tell me, Adam, I need the information for invoicing. I need it now. So I then prepare all the people to invoice. I then provide the amounts to invoice. She then puts the invoices on Sage. She then sends the invoices via Sage. She then confirms to me that the invoices have been sent.
Mm-hmm.
She then confirms when the invoices have been paid by doing bank reconciliations, and then she chases up bad debtors.
Okay, great. So actually, you could even separate the invoice chasing up, the payment chasing, as a separate task completely.
Yeah.
So yeah, that sounds very detailed. Thank you so much, Adam. Did you have any questions or difficulties that you want help with when it comes to mapping it out?
That bit was all right, but
Mhm.
there's one of the things that just scared me on one of the slides before is a lot of the stuff I'm doing at the moment with the VAs is a lot of ad hoc, and I need to sort of get rid of that.
Okay, ad hoc is a good one. Is the ad hoc still related to invoicing, or is ad hoc something else completely, like admin and
No, the
everything?
invoicing and the bookkeeping is very simple. It's a daily, it's a monthly task.
Mhm.
It's simple to do, it's simple to set out, and it's simple to work through.
Okay.
It's breaking down the other stuff.
Is it the ad hoc that you're finding hard to kind of systemize? Okay, thanks for that. I will cover it shortly. I'd like to ask anyone else in the room if you can share what you worked on. First of all, share with me what task you wanted to actually do the exercise on.
I'd like to, I don't know if you haven't read my chat, obviously.
I can see, you cannot hear me, or...
Yeah, what's happening is I've got technical problems. I haven't used this laptop on Zoom for about 6 months, and I've come away for the day, with 3 days at my new house in Wigan that I'm refurbing, and I'm in the middle of this mess. So anyway, to cut a long story short, my situation was that you passed me a VA about 18 months ago, and she's been great, but she's decided to move on to run her own business. What I found, it actually hit the right time because I'm looking for more than just one task. And so I thought the idea was, with what you do now, is you can provide multiple VAs specializing in certain functions. Yeah. And one of them obviously is my media presence and sorting out Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., etc. Another area is bookkeeping. But as your Adam said just now, there is a bit of ad hoc as well. Obviously, this is 3 different areas. So how do you deal with that?
So the reason why we want to look at individual tasks and to map out a process, it's not actually to say from the mapping out, the VA is going to do this and I'm going to do that. is just to map out individual steps. Once we can actually see the steps, we can then identify who's supposed to be doing what. So we map out the steps first before we say who's going to do what. Now, by doing this, you can see of all the tasks in your business, what the load will be like on your VA once you've identified which tasks are your VA going to be looking after. That will help you to decide, well, do I need one VA? Do I need two VAs? Do I need three VAs? Because if primarily your most pressing task will be, let's say, bookkeeping, you can then decide, do I have enough freed up time to maybe cover some of the other tasks that I would probably have delegated over to a VA? Or am I able to look at the VA schedule to see if she can still devote maybe half an hour a day to just look at ad hoc tasks? So this might answer Adam's question about what do I do with ad hoc tasks. With everything that we want to delegate to a VA, we can program it. We can put it in a schedule to say if the VA can spend half an hour, if the VA can spend 1 hour a day just addressing ad hoc tasks, then you've programmed something that nobody can program in a way, because that's what ad hoc, the definition of ad hoc is. But you can program a block of time for an admin VA to address ad hoc tasks. In terms of your question, Neil, should you get one VA or two VAs? I would always go back to what is your priority right now. So that's why step one in the delegation success roadmap is always to have business clarity, because you do not have to delegate everything today. You can delegate the most pressing task, which is at this point, you've got, let's say, bookkeeping is your most pressing task. So sit down and create a process map just for bookkeeping. Then I'm just going to share my screen again because I want to show you the next step, which we haven't covered. The next step is to then create a program, which is we want to create a default diary for that task. So a default diary is your VA's weekly routine. Adam mentioned, for example, invoicing is a monthly task, which means that really Adam will not need to hire even a part-time bookkeeping VA, because if the task is only done once a month, let's say last Friday of the month, then there's no need for the VA to spend hours on bookkeeping for the rest of the week or the rest of the days in that week for the month. So likewise, Neil, if you're looking at a VA who's going to be doing bookkeeping for you, as long as it's basic bookkeeping task and maybe an admin VA can cover some of that, invoicing perhaps, or chasing payments. When we create the program, we can see how many hours the VA will be devoting on that task. So yes, it's preferable for you to have separate VAs looking after specific tasks in your business, but not everyone will have the luxury of hiring separate VAs or multiple VAs.
No, I don't. Sorry, I think you got the wrong end of what I meant. I thought that you were able to provide, a VA for a couple of hours a week, and then another VA for something else a couple of hours a week, and so on. Not a couple of hours, maybe 4 hours a week. Honestly, when you're doing one VA for 40 hours or whatever, it's too much when you're a jack of all trades, because you don't get the quality out of them. So my idea was that if I wanted to do something to help me with my post-party and my media presence, I need a specialist for that. And I need to be focused on that, say 2-4 hours a week or something, maybe longer, I don't know. And then somebody doing bookkeeping for 2 hours a week. You see what I'm saying?
I got some of that. Unfortunately, the audio wasn't great, but I'll see if I can maybe address that. So when we have business clarity, we can create this process map where we can identify who's supposed to be doing what in which task and for how long they're supposed to be doing it for. That helps us decide, well, what kind of VA am I going to hire? Am I going to hire a generalist VA working for me part-time, so 4 hours a day? And then this is what the VA schedule is going to be like because I've created the program, I've created the weekly routine for that VA. Or am I going to hire a freelance VA? I do recommend that you still need to create a weekly routine so you actually know when to bring in that freelance VA. Let's say that freelance VA, her routine is to come in every Wednesday morning to go over my accounts and to chase up invoices, for example. So all of this, which is step one on the roadmap, helps you with business clarity so that you can actually make that decision as a business owner to go, right, these are the tasks that I need delegating. These are the number of hours that I will need because I've mapped it out. I can see where I will need the VA to come in, and I can see where the VA, is no longer needed. So I'll only need her for this many hours for the week. I want some hands in the room to tell me if you'd like to see what a default diary would look like. Okay, fantastic. I'm just going to bring in Neil. I think there's two of you wanting to enter the room. I don't know if that's you as well.
Because of the fact that I'm trying to watch on one and mixing it up. The one works better than the other, so I'm doing a bit of two-way here. Sorry.
That's absolutely fine. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen again.
That's all.
That's okay. We all get that sometimes. We've got here utilizing VAs for property acquisition. It is the same process map that I showed earlier, that I shared earlier. Okay, let me just hit the present button. So we've got here, we've identified the project, which is finding property deals. We've now clarified what the purpose of that project is, which is to utilize a VA to find property deals. Now we're looking at the process map. This was created using Miro, the software or the platform, but you can do this with a pen and paper. The idea is to just break down the steps, the goal into smaller steps, so you can then, the next step in that process is to clearly identify who's supposed to be doing what. So the identification actually happens after you've mapped out what the process is, so that is it right for me to get the VA to be the one ringing the vendor over the phone? And obviously they can't meet the vendor in person. Then you'll clearly see, no, it's not possible, and it's not right for the VA to be doing that. So by creating this process map and then identifying who's supposed to be doing what, you can color coordinate it like I did here. But really the idea is to just be super clear and to have your expectations managed as well, who's supposed to be doing what. A very good point as well is that when a property investor identifies the strategy that they want to pursue, it's you who's actually providing the solutions, not the VA. So the VA has no role in this point when you've identified what your investment strategy is. The VA's role is to help you carry out the solution that you've identified. Okay. The procedure itself, which we're not going to cover today, is where you're going to identify, well, what is step one of this process. So you will actually need to create a procedure for each and every one of this. Let's say pipeline building. What does that involve? What is step one? What is step two? Does the VA data scrape listings on Rightmove? Does the VA then find contact details of the letting agent or the estate agent? So that's this step, the procedure step, which we're not going to do. But in terms of the program, which is when we create the default diary or the routine for the VA to carry out the tasks that you've identified, it can look something like this. This is an example. This may not be what your program will look like, but the idea is to create a routine for the VA so that you can also identify and work out how many hours is the VA supposed to work for you. Now, this means that you may not necessarily need to hire full-time and freelance VAs, part-time VAs, and you may just consider freelance VAs. Now, freelance VAs are hired on a more expensive hourly rate, but ultimately you might just end up saving yourself a lot of money, because once you've created the program and you've actually worked out how many hours the VA is supposed to work for you, then you limit your expense to that many number of hours and not have a part-time or full-time VA where the VA is simply twiddling their thumbs because they don't actually know what they're supposed to be doing for you. So in this example, we've got here the task, the role, and the focus. So for example, with property acquisitions, the property acquisitions as a process, in this instance, the schedule is for the VA to be doing data scraping Monday to Wednesday, 2 hours. This can be flexi, so the VA doesn't have to be working in UK working hours. It means that you can be clear when giving instructions to the VA, I don't need you to log in, I just need you to work for 2 hours, and then I'll give you instructions on how you can submit your work to me. And then on a Thursday, which is for 1 hour flexi, the VA will now create a mailing list. So in this instance, what the property investor wants to happen is that the VA sends out direct to vendor letters. Okay, so a mailing list needs to be created. Finally, 1 hour on the last day of the week, the VA now prepares a mailing campaign on Stamp. So again, the routine will include how often it's done. Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it once a month only? So the rest of the steps, we've got a submission for client approval. This one doesn't take long, 5 minutes. Okay, that's just a quick email or a tag on Slack or Asana. Hey, at client, I've got the mailing list for you ready to approve, or I've got a campaign waiting for you on Stamp, ready for your approval. The actual sending out of campaigns as well, this may only take 10 minutes. And this may be once a month or weekly. That depends on you as a business owner, how frequently you want DTV campaigns to go out. Sending out follow-up campaigns as well, the frequency of which is decided by you. Is it done once a month? Is it done every 4 weeks or 5 weeks? So this is what a default diary can look like. Has this given everyone an idea of how to program the VA's weekly routine? Okay. Can we get some members in the room to maybe share what they've worked on? I'd like to hear from maybe Trevor or Colin. I think you're both business partners.
Hi, Christina. Hi, it's Trevor.
Hi, Trevor. What did you work on for your workshop?
Yeah, so for us, the it's new for us to consider, a VA or a member of staff. We've just got to the point where we need to take on some help with different parts of the business. So we run a small family letting agency. So I've identified dealing with maintenance issues that are reported by tenants as the issue. And I guess this has made me think about, I need to put a plan in place as to what that, step-by-step process would be for a VA to do, contractors to ring, details for them to, I don't know if I'm on the right lines. I've put in maybe a process together so that when an issue is reported, I can simply email it to the VA and they can take over. But they've got a process.
That's right. It does sound like an enormous task and a complicated one, which is why really what I'd like business owners and property investors to start off with is to just have that business clarity. What exactly is the most pressing task that we can delegate over to a VA? Identify them, map it out into a process, and then create a program for it. Because then once you get a VA in and you haven't got that ready, the VA will actually be waiting for you to give them instructions. And that's just going to be extra time and extra money off you, instead of you then freeing up your time to get on with other parts of your business. So I know it's tedious to have this sorted out before you hire a VA, but that's actually the investment. You could think of it as that you put in beforehand, so that by the time you actually bring in a VA, you've got the whole thing prepared and ready.
Mapped out, and you've got your process
Mapped
then
out.
for someone to step in. It's like putting a step-by-step guide together of a list of all the contractors, all their telephone
That's
numbers,
right.
and then the step-by-step job that they would do.
Mm-hmm.
Which will take a bit of time, but obviously once that's done and planned out, someone could step in and just free up a lot of my time.
Exactly. But what the experience that sometimes we hear from other property investors is the rush to get a VA in, and then later on, 2-3 months down the line, or worse, maybe 6 months down the line, they've still not actually got the VA really onboarded into what you want to happen in your business, because there's so many things that you want to happen in your business. It's typical for property investors to look at VAs as a one-stop solution that will solve everything.
I totally agree. Can I intervene, Christine?
Sure.
As I say, I've had Michelle for the last 18 months, and I'll be honest with you, it was a mess, because what you're saying here makes total sense. I think the big problem you've got, especially when you first start, is you don't really know what you don't know, what is going to happen. And then suddenly you start throwing stuff at the VA and they don't understand what you're saying. So then you're trying to explain it, but it's all ad hoc and it just becomes a mess. And it probably took me 6 months to 8 months to get her to understand how to do bookkeeping. And then she's done that and then she's leaving, and it's really frustrating because she's just started to get things right.
That's right. So, business clarity as well. We go back to the 2 reasons where our intention to leverage VAs ends up becoming a frustrating experience for us, i.e. a failure. Like, we would consider, you look at yourself and go, where did I fail as a business owner in this? It's, again, one of 2 things: lack of clarity and lack of systems. So when at this point, we're not even thinking of, well, I need a VA to come in, right? But as a business owner, your first step is just to have business clarity. What exactly are the tasks that you just are not able to look after it now, but your business still needs in order for your business to work. So if you mention like bookkeeping and you tried to get a non-bookkeeping VA to actually do the bookkeeping work, and it took you 6-8 months to get that done, only for the VA to then give up. Sometimes as well, VAs give up because they don't actually like the task that you've given them, right? It's not to say that we cannot outsource basic bookkeeping tasks to an admin, a generalist admin VA. It's to have clarity and to have your expectations managed in terms of what they can actually do. So maybe you can have your regular admin VA to look at a multitude of tasks, including basic bookkeeping. But for the specialist tasks within that bookkeeping, that's when you'll get a non-generalist admin VA to now take over. But you as a business owner, you know exactly when to bring that specialist VA in for those specialist VA tasks. And you know that because you've got clarity, you've got a program, you've got a schedule as to when things are supposed to happen. Right now, I've asked you to simply use a pen and paper to actually work out a simple exercise. What we can offer our clients is a platform wherein they can actually not only have the guidance to work out this all of these individual steps for delegation success, but also to have the space to record what it is that they're doing, what it is that they're working on in order to have business clarity, in order to create a smooth onboarding experience for when they actually bring in a VA, how to go through recruitment. And then this is when you'll start really scaling your business. Once you create and build a template library, then you're looking at, instead of the VA, now we're looking at the VA's hours, not just your hours. Instead of the VA spending, let's say, 3 hours a week on a task, with a template library, we could be shaving that down to 2 hours a week, or maybe even less. But this is where we come in to help our clients. On this platform, we can give the client. So for example, with business clarity, I'm just going to open this block. Sorry for it, it's loading. It's slow today. So we're giving you not just the instruction and the guidance, but also the space for you to then go, right, I need to work out a process map. I need to be assigning tasks within that process map. So it's all of here, and you can monitor your progress. Have I started on this task? Where am I at? Am I, in the middle of doing it, or have I now completed that task? And it's not going to be a complicated platform. We're not here to complicate things. We're here to give you the guidance and the space to actually complete the tasks, the necessary tasks, which we believe will help you in working with VAs efficiently. So these are the blocks that we covered earlier, the 6 Ps: prerequisite, purpose, process. Now, in terms of the process, we're not actually, you won't be able to actually do it here on this platform. This platform is called Notion. But what we will do for you, we hold your hand throughout this process, will help you actually look at, what's working and what's not working with how you're designing that workflow. But we can recommend that you either choose a linear Kanban style of process map, so it goes left to right. An example of this would be Asana or Trello. But there's also a flowchart style, which I showed you as an example earlier. I used Miro to do that. I'll open it for you quickly. I know we've only got 5 minutes left. Again, you can always just start with a pen and paper and then transpose it onto a more fancy platform like Miro or Asana. which is absolutely fine. So we've got here, this is the exact thing that I showed you earlier. I just exported it as an image. So you can create shapes, connection lines, pens, comment. You can upload images as well. So these are the shapes. You can select, way to differentiate the roles using colors. You can be quite creative about it. Asana, most of you have worked with Asana, and this would be the linear version of this flow chart. So this flow chart shows what the VA does for your marketing process, whereas a linear example of this would be this much. We've got here stage 1, the VA does data scraping, and then we've got one task card for each campaign, each monthly campaign. You've got here mailing list creation and so on and so forth. Let me just close that. The other process which we think is going to be super helpful as well is a space for you to create your onboarding for when you bring the VA in. What you want to talk about to introduce your business. So we've got that. What else? Questions about how to actually bring the VA in with your team, and things like creating company policies, creating a training manual, which again is, I'm not gonna lie, it's not a simple task, but someone's got to do it. We can't actually do it for you, but we will be doing it with you, which is a tremendous help for a lot of property investors out there. Anyone else want to look at the screen? I can move on back to the presentation. We've only got a few minutes left. I would like at least 5 minutes or so if you want to stay on to answer some of your questions, Q&A. Okay, that's fine. I'll just go back here.
I'm going to have to go at 11, Christina, but I tell you what I would like is, first of all, would you be able to share your recording of this so I can watch it again?
Absolutely, yeah.
And secondly, would we be able to have like a 5 or 10 minute one-to-one just to discuss the options we've got?
Thank you, Neil. Yes, absolutely. So after this, I'll show you where you can book a one-to-one call with me so that we can look at your individual situation. So the conclusion is that, yes, we bring in VAs to delegate tasks to, but who's really doing the work here would be your systems. Because without systems, your VA can just be doing tasks that is not actually helping your business at all. So the systems is what's actually doing the heavy lifting in your business. Unfortunately, when we hire VAs, they do not come with systems. The systems is your job as a business owner to get right before you bring in a VA. This is what we're helping property investors and business owners with to become Advantage members. And with this system, you've seen the roadmap that we can offer you. This platform will give you step-by-step modules for you to complete one by one in a guided way. We also provide support when it's time for you to be working with the VA. Also, when you're ready, and this is optional, you can do the recruitment of your VAs through us. We do a recruitment free access to vetted VAs. Or if you're already working with virtual assistants, you don't have to, unless your business needs this after doing your business clarity, you don't have to hire VAs through us. As an Advantage member, that's an option that you have access to. So there's no VA finder's fee as well if it is within, you've identified that as a business goal to hire VAs. And also we've got ready-made systems if you need for the 3 most commonly delegated property tasks. And this would be property acquisitions. You've seen what that looks like. This will not be on Miro. This is actually going to be on Asana so that you can work on the platform. The other 2 tasks would be ad hoc VA tasks, and the third one would be content and social media manager VA. And then we will be holding monthly VA masterclass sessions for you to elevate even more how you're working with your VAs. We are pricing this at £45 plus VAT a month. But what we're actually offering to those who've come in today is we're reducing this to £27 for the first 3 months. If you sign up by the 31st of Jan, we will run another workshop session in February. For those who will join us in February, they still get a discount, not as much as those who will sign up by January, and that will be £37 a month. So I'll leave you with this, one of my favorite business quotes out there from James Clear, author of Atomic Habits. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. I hear a lot of tragic VA stories out there. Their VAs didn't work, their VA was, frustrating, expensive, but unfortunately, ultimately, we want to look at ourselves as business owners. If we are to own our business, we need to own and look at our responsibility for the failure of the VA. And this is precisely what the quote is referring to. The failure was in us when we haven't got systems in place to work with our VAs. Thank you so much for attending today's workshop. We did go over the time a little bit, couple of minutes. If you're still able to, please hang on and stay on so that I can answer some of your questions. And I will stop sharing my screen and be happy for you to unmute yourself so I can help you with your specific questions.
I'm going to have to love you and leave you, I'm afraid.
That's okay. Thank you so much, Adam, for joining us here today.
Catch you soon.
Catch you. Bye.
Bye.
Anyone else in the room who've got questions? I can stay on for a little bit longer. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining.
Hello.
Hi, David. Is that you or is that someone else? Oh, sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, Stephen, don't worry. I'll hang on.
How are you? Okay, yeah, my
Stephen,
question.
thank you so much.
Yeah, I didn't miss the price, the package. Is it
okay?
Is it kind of like, is it monthly subscription for the?
There is a monthly subscription. That does not include the VA's fees. I just need to clarify that. This is simply for access to the platform where we can guide you in terms of creating a system for which your VA will be working in, and for you to be delegating tasks to the VA.
Okay, just like the dashboard.
Feel free to take a screenshot of this. Thank you so much. David, sorry, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, hi. Nice to meet you also. I was a little bit late. So just very briefly, we have a rent-to-rent portfolio, and we have now got to the stage where we are starting to feel that we need to sort of obviously unload some of the workload, primarily the sort of the administration. The only sort of only complication that I think we're finding is again, because it's quite ad hoc and quite responsive, for example, using Spare Room to try and allocate. I mean, it's quite a straightforward task, but it's laborious, right? But it is quite reactive. So if we put a message on Spare Room, are you looking for a room in such and such? Yes, we are. When can we arrange an appointment? That the return of the applicant may not come back to to the following day, or sorry, to that evening, but because of the time differences, we may lose that opportunity. So I think from what you're explaining, which obviously makes complete sense, is that we do have to, design, put together a work of progress, a manual, if you like, for the potential VA going forward.
I really like this step within the delegation success program, which is once we start mapping something out, and I know ad hoc, as you mentioned, is reactionary, there's still a trigger that always happens before the VA actually, or before you need to bring in the VA to do the work. So we may not be able to always predict when it happens, but we can predict a trigger that does happen. This could be a WhatsApp message. This could be a notification on whichever platform you're on. Now, in terms of creating a program for this, I might suggest that if you cannot tell what time of the day it happens, then your VA schedule might look like something like this, wherein a VA checks first thing in the morning, let's say 6 a.m. UK time, and then another block of time, midday, 11 or 12, noon, and then finally a last chunk of the day before she signs off. Now, this means that when you recruit the VA, you can be absolutely very clear what her schedule is going to be like and eliminate candidates that do not like that kind of schedule. But you only know this because you've done your homework beforehand and actually clarified with certainty what the day is going to look like for the VA.
Amazing. That's solved that one. No, that's great. Again, it'd be great to arrange a one-to-one if you wouldn't mind just pinging over, the relevant information, and maybe we can have a little chat.
That sounds a good solution for you, David. Having someone check early in the day and then later on, and then you can't, rather than them just responding immediately, at least someone's on the case. I've got a similar thing in terms of responding to tenants who want to view properties.
Exactly the same.
Come in at any time of the day. So, but probably a good idea would be to say, right, check them at 10 o'clock in the morning, check them at 3 o'clock, and check them at, 8 o'clock at night, whatever.
It's a massive help, as you know yourself. You get sucked into so much of the, you get diverted so easily. But this would be a massive help, and also the maintenance side of it as well. So there's
the other thing is as well. That's good. It's good to hear your issue there, because for us, I in the back of my mind, I'd cross that off as something that a VA couldn't do because it sounded a bit complicated. So it sounds like maybe any issue can be resolved with a bit of thought. Maybe that's interesting to hear.
Yes. So this is what we tell our clients. We cannot actually design a one-size-fits-all for every possible property investor's business out there and any other business owner who wants to work with VAs. The most that we can do is give them the basics of what we consider best practice and best philosophies when it comes to working with VAs. And that's why we say, we're not able to create the systems for you, but we will do it with you. So only by you telling us, Christina, this is my specific situation. How do I actually create a system for this? As Trevor said, it sounds like an impossible situation. It doesn't sound like it's a VA-able task. But actually, what we can do is translate that into a VA-able task and still have the clarity that you as a business owner still needs to be mindful of your expectations, which part is still VA-able and which part is no longer VA-able. Because then you won't go blaming the VA. The VA is like, oh, whoa, I'm not going to work for you anymore. And then you have VAs disappearing all over the place. And then you have issues with retention, issues with recruitment. So back to understanding where does it fail? Lack of clarity and lack of system.
Sure, I understand. we give you the tools, and the tools will be used as to how those tools are being
Absolutely.
delivered, right?
Yeah.
So okay, no, it's perfect.
Thank you for that question, David.
Okay.
Anyone else in the room got maybe specific questions about their business? Well, I'm not going to keep you any longer. I know we've gone over the time by 10 minutes. I want to thank everyone who's joined us today. I know you as a property investor myself, I know how busy your day is. So I'd like to thank you all for coming and attending. I will send out the replay to everyone who's registered. And if I haven't got your email address, please feel free anytime to reach out to me on Facebook. We're on Instagram as well at UK Property VA. Please follow us, and then we'll continue the conversation.